Hey everyone, welcome to He's Not Wrong. I'm your host Chad D. And as I started out last weekend's episode, I said I lied, and guess what? I lied again. The Emma McGowan episode that I promised is indefinitely put on hold. I feel like Lily Moskovitz and her cable show on The Princess Diaries that has two viewers, and she promised an interview with a princess, and she stood her up. Well, I kind of feel like that right now, but I do have a really fun episode planned for all of you. I have a really good friend of mine. His name is Ben Arnberg. He was my college mentor, and I brought him onto this week's episode to talk all things higher education. He's really funny, and we got some really good hot takes from him. So, what I just want to preface before we get into our conversation is I press record. We had really good conversation. Then I realized I can't just stop it now. So you're going to kind of come into the middle of that. Okay. So just know when we're talking about utilities, you're coming in just a few minutes after we started our conversation. So I hope you enjoy it. And here is my conversation with Ben Arnberg. So for the audience, and I am going to use this on my social media, but I have beef, and I've never made it public on social media, but I do have beef with Twinkle. Is it Andress Kavanaugh or Twinkle can't say her name?
Her married name is Kavanaugh.
So what's her full name? Twinkle.
Twinkle Andress Kavanaugh. Her maiden name is.
Yeah, I don't
Andress.
like her. She number one. Okay, let me tell you guys. She is the public commissioner for Alabama's like utilities.
Mm.
So they set the prices for electricity all throughout the state, and they're not like they can do whatever they want. They're very lightly regulated.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those political positions that nobody really pays much attention to. I mean, people pay attention to the governor and the lieutenant governor, and during elections, the secretary of state, but nobody really pays much attention to what any of the other state level officers, elected officers, do, and you have to be elected to that. And so, just basically, so long, because if this is Alabama, so long as you run as a Republican, you're going to win, and nobody's really going to pay attention to anything you did during your campaign or after. So,
But her position has immense power
yeah,
that no one really talks about.
correct. And I think it's because a large amount of people don't really exactly know what it is or what it means or how it affects them.
So this is why Alabamians should care. Let me give you a real life example of what I went through. So you see my apartment. This place is old. Y'all don't get to see if you're watching on YouTube, TikTok, whatever. You don't get to see the behind the scenes of what we're looking at. It's an old apartment. This wall that we're sitting in front of does not do it justice. There is no insulation in this building. Do you know how much my power bill was for the month of January?
Between 2 and 300.
It was $460.
Yeah.
That door over there is my laundry room. It's just concrete. I had to wear socks and put a towel on the floor because it was so cold. My feet were going numb. I had to wear shoes walking around my apartment. If you went next to a window, you would feel the wind blowing in from outside. Now, this isn't an apartment management complaint. And we have friends who work for the management company, so I hope he hears this. But my issue is those prices. My power bill in the middle of winter should not be $460.
Yeah, I mean, that's a complicated interplay between building and the power itself. I live in a new building, so I don't have power issues. I do have issues with the water board, though, because my water bill is about 3 times higher in Birmingham than it ever was anywhere else I've ever lived. And I really don't use that much water. So it doesn't make sense to me how it can consistently be that high. It's as high as my parents' house on Lake Martin, and they have, a much larger house. They use a sprinkler system. It's 2 people, and yet mine is still higher than theirs. So I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense.
My complaint on my power bill is, I think, rooted in empathy for people in the community, because I chose this apartment because of how affordable it was. And so I'm thinking I chose this because I had the privilege of being able to shop around for apartments. But there's some people in the area, they don't have the privilege of having an assortment of apartments to choose from. So this might be their
There
only
might be the
option.
only option. Mhm.
And that is so like that power bill wasn't fun to pay, but I could pay it. But there's people out there that's the difference between like food and medication.
Well, the thing about power bills in general is that it's a variable bill. It's not like your cell phone bill that's now that most people are on some version of an unlimited plan or whatnot. It's not like it was back when I first got a cell phone where you got charged by the minute or per text message. That's a stable bill, so you can count on your Verizon bill being, in my case, around $100 a month. Power and water, though, are variable, and so they can be very frustrating because they change from one month to the next. And as seasons transition, it can be a dramatic difference. Like going into winter, it can all of a sudden be a very dramatic difference. And it's something that often is low enough to where you don't really think about it. Like my power bill is low enough to where I don't really pay attention to what I'm doing from month to month because it's never so significant that I'm at risk of overdrawing my checking account or whatever. So it's on auto pay and I just don't think about it. But every now and again, it will be sharply different. And that can be very dramatic because it's not something you plan for. And to your point about people who may not have options, most of them have to plan their finances very, very carefully from month to month basis. There's not a lot of wiggle room. They're in jobs that don't give them bonuses or raises or have a lot of job growth opportunity. And so whatever their fixed amount that they can spend is, it's also likely to be that fixed amount for an extended period of time. And so they're, whatever flexibility they have to cover an extremely large bill from one month means they're cutting into really non-existent savings, which prevents them from furthering their financial progress in any way. So I get it. But that's the reason why I live in a brand new apartment. When I moved in, no one else had lived in it before, but that's part of the reason why is because I don't want to have to worry about things you have to worry about here. And it's not just power. These buildings tend to leak.
Yeah.
They tend to
Yep.
break a lot. I mean,
Yep.
you offset that by good location and charm. And it's actually a large square footage. And hot take here, I hate open concepts, and historic buildings never have open concept floor plans. You have distinct, separate spaces and rooms, which mine does not have. It's all one giant room. So when you're entertaining, you can have people in here in your studio or in your living room. They're not in your bedroom. Whereas if I have people over, they are technically, even if they might be standing in the kitchen, they are technically in the bedroom also, which I mean, it's like far away, but it's still just strange. And also, I work remote first. I have a remote first job. And so, like, I have to be very conscious of where I'm setting up to work for the day so that my bed isn't right behind me, just because I think it's weird to be in a work call with like a client from across the world and your bed is behind you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It seems too intimate. So I don't like that. But there are trade-offs one way or another.
So to set the scene, everyone, I know I already did the intro. I told you all about Ben beforehand, so there was an
And I have
introduction
no
there.
idea what
But
he actually said.
and you'll find out on Sunday.
On
You'll
Sunday.
find out. Do you listen to my podcast?
Yes, while I'm folding laundry.
What's your favorite episode?
I liked the lady that was running for Matt Gates's old congressional seat.
Yep.
Mainly because I was just kind of surprised that you were able to get her.
That wasn't me.
Mainly, and I don't mean this to say that it's doubt on your part as a host or a publicist or anything like that, but you work outside of her constituency. Like there wasn't an obvious gain for her being on your podcast in the midst of an election.
So let me set the scene for this. Again, you guys, I'll circle back to the opening. But I got her on the podcast because my boyfriend Taylor, everyone on the podcast knows all about Taylor. He set that up. That was all him. He lives in her constituency. They live in Florida's first congressional district. Him and his family. So a lot of friends down there, loved ones, his family. So it made sense, but it was shocking. She was my first scheduled guest right after we created this podcast. So I agree.
Yeah, because at first, when you first started like sending it around, I was like, I anticipated you would probably have Mallory Hagan. I
Yep.
forget her married name now, but Mallory Hagan, former Miss
Stramera.
America. I figured you'd have her, and a couple of the other people who have kind of public profiles, but that are close friends that you interact with all the time. I didn't know that you were going to have like actual public figures at random to me that I didn't know you knew of or was aware of, or that they already knew who you were, because that was what, the second one or the third one?
So she was supposed to be my first guest. We had to reschedule, which is why Mallory was the first. But yeah, she was my third episode, second guest, something like that. But okay, you're taking away from the plot here. I'm asking that question because I want to get to the details of the episode to make sure that you actually listen to it.
Oh, I was folding laundry. I don't
Sure,
remember. Things go
sure,
in and out of my
sure. You
head.
just know the title. You know who they.
I know that. See, a preface for this, and I say this all the time. This is when I was an academic, I hated going to conferences because I don't retain any information that I listen to. I have to read it. Even when I was in graduate school, if a professor was doing like a recorded lecture, I would retain absolutely none of it. I could read the PowerPoints and retain what was on the PowerPoints or any reading that they assigned. I can recall anything I read pretty easily, but nothing I listen to. So that's why I myself don't really listen to podcasts, because I just feel like it's pointless. I'm not going to retain anything I hear. Um,
Convenient.
yeah. But this is why I read all the time. I don't really watch a whole lot of TV shows. Like, I don't binge watch anything because
Mhm.
I don't pay good enough attention to it.
So I've already told everyone that you're an academic, but that's a perfect segue into talking about your education. Can you please tell them what your doctorate degree is in?
Yeah. So my PhD is in higher education administration. I have to clarify that is not, I don't work in K-12. I never taught in K-12. There's another kind of degree path that's parallel to that that's called educational leadership. And that's like the principal factory. People who want to be principals or superintendents do that educational leadership PhD. Mine is exclusively higher education administration. And I clarified this because I really hate being around children. Hate, 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 hate.
Sure.
My political platform, if I ever run, is a child-free Whole Foods. I'm an anti-natalist. I don't believe in children. I mean, I want the best for them, but keep them away from me. I don't find them cute or charming. And so people all the time are like, but you are in the field of education. How do you not love children? I'm like, I've only ever worked at the college level, ever. For 15 years I've taught classes, they've all been at the college level. And now they're at the graduate level. So I'm usually the youngest person in the class that I'm teaching. So I do have to clarify that because I don't like children.
So you've brought up that I've had guests on here. You knew I was going to bring in Mallory. I brought
Mhm.
in Gabe Alamont. I've had Alice Elm. I've had Cokehead. And I knew since creating this podcast that I was going to have you on here because I wanted it to be a fun experience with friends. And I like to pride myself in that I surround myself with really, really smart people. And you are hands down one of the most intelligent people with really interesting perspectives that I like to hear from. But also, you have amazing hot takes. And we're going to get to that
Okay.
in a little bit. But
This is why we're drinking wine, by the way. I'm more likely to give you an honest hot take if I've had at least one drink of wine.
But I want to ask about your PhD working in higher
Mhm.
education and where we are, like the state of the country with the attacks on higher education, and specifically with
Mhm.
your specialty with what you got your degree in. Are any of those attacks on higher education going to start affecting you? Is it affecting you? Are you seeing any difference in like what you're able to do and what the administration's telling you?
So I don't work full time in higher education anymore. I work for a technology consulting company. I'm not going to say which one, but I will say that everything I'm about to say does not reflect the opinions of that company if you figure out who I work for. Nor do they reflect Auburn University, where I got my PhD and where I worked for a long period of time. I do teach classes from time to time as needed, and that as a starting point for this, to answer your question, is reflective of a lot of the attacks of higher education. Although this is a symptom of problems that have been festering for much longer. So there's a faculty shortage in a variety of fields right now that they can't really fill. Number one, a lot of administrative policies are affecting the way that universities fund their faculties, right? So, like the cuts to research grants, a lot of faculty on college campuses, especially your like star faculty, are going to be funded by research contracts and grants. That's primarily what they do. That's what gives the institution its prestige. And then they might teach a little bit on the side, maybe a class per semester. So I get asked to teach from time to time because the lack of research funding means the university that I work for uh, has a difficult time recruiting faculty and keeping them full time. Um, so that's really the only way it affects me directly personally is that at any moment the curriculum could change, which means I might not get asked back. Like there was a class I taught this spring that's a requirement for all education majors because I teach in the field of education. It's required for all education majors. You can't sit for the teaching certificate without taking this class. The university's accreditation is dependent upon offering this class, and it happens to have diversity in the title. And so there's been speculation, will this go away in the fall? Um, is it something that's going to be cut? When I was teaching it, I've taught it since 2018. So this was probably the class that I taught this past spring was probably the 10th time I've taught it. And this was the first time where I very much was careful about what I put into it, what I said during class. It was online, so I knew people could be recording it. And I was very, very wary of giving the type of feedback that students really deserved because I was like, I'm already teaching a class that's politically sensitive. It's the exact type of class that's being targeted, even though it predated the big DEI push. It predated that. It's been on the books for decades. So I was very concerned that I could be recorded and it could end up on the news. There was a faculty member who also teaches this class who happened to be my dissertation director. Now she's very senior and tenured, who taught that class. The last time she taught that class, the student recorded her and complained about her on the Rick and Bubba show.
Oh
So
my
she ended
God.
up on Rick and Bubba. She thought it was kind of a badge of honor. And so now we joke like, oh, any day now I might end up on Fox News. But it it's not necessarily something that you want to experience, especially if you're someone like me who would be considered more junior faculty and thus vulnerable because I'm not tenured and I have another job elsewhere. So it's not like if they decide not to ask me back, it's the end of the world, but it is something I like to do. And it just it allows me to continue to practice that skill that I've been practicing my whole adult life. So there's that. The way that this is going to affect everyone, not just me, but and something that my consulting company is very much looking at is that a huge amount of technology innovations, a huge amount of healthcare innovations, all different kinds of stuff often originates from academic research and institutions like MIT, Stanford, Harvard, Johns Hopkins, all of those places. And when a research grant is supporting an academic discovery, it means we're all entitled to the benefits of that discovery. So, like, if Johns Hopkins all of a sudden cures cancer, that benefits us. And they did it, by the way, on a publicly funded project. Then we all benefit from that cure. It's not like a private company who discovers it, patents it, and then all of a sudden charges whatever they want for it, at least for the first however long patents last, 20 years before it enters public domain again, or however long that is. I said 20, I don't really know. But, so these cuts to research funding are a big deal because, and it affects everyone, not just people in higher education, because if all of a sudden we get a cure for any type of major disease, and it comes from a private company, we, the public, are no longer entitled to those benefits without paying some additional cost. So that's pretty concerning. Having worked in higher education for a long period of time too, though, I am aware enough that the industry as a whole didn't really do themselves any favors. And so, in many ways, you could see this backlash against the industry as a whole coming from miles away. Tuition has risen at a rate beyond any other commodity. Administrative bloat has gotten insane. You've, of course, got the big scandals like Larry Nassar at Michigan State. All that kind of stuff has been going on for a long period of time. And so, and higher education has been caught in many of those types of scandals and cover ups. They've done very little to address the cost of education. They've done very little to address the meritocracy or, you know, qualifications of people who get in, legacy admissions, all that. And so it's understandable why a lot of people are irate at the industry, are distrustful of the industry. So I don't mean to say that higher education is blameless, but I do think a lot of people out there who attack higher education don't really understand the ramifications of what will happen if they get their way.
We've talked about it on the podcast before where like everything's it's like a pendulum. Things swing to one extreme, it comes back to center, goes to the other extreme. Do you think we've reached an extreme on that pendulum swing? Are we still kind of going towards an extreme right now? And where's that line on higher education? Like when do people start to realize, oh, this is bad? How bad can it get before that line is reached?
It can get worse. I think once people start to realize that the university as it stands now is probably like generic 4-year major institution, let's just say, because there's so many different types. I'm going to refer to like the R1 types that I'm familiar with. They're still going to operate business as usual as much as they can. You are not going to see them making giant administrative cuts, changes to the way they fund things, the types of things they're doing. They're still recruiting high dollar students who have expectations for student services and facilities that cost a lot of money. And so I don't think a lot of people realize yet that when the research grants go away, the tuition is going to be even worse than it already is. I mean, it's already pretty unaffordable for almost everybody. And that's with institutions getting between a quarter and a third of their budget
My cat just jumped on him for those people. Hold on, let me get him off.
from research contracts and grants. Poor kitty. So this is how you know I've been teaching for a long time. That just happened, and I continued talking on subject. But
I apologize. Keep going.
but yeah, I don't think people really understand how institutions by and large are funded nowadays. They think it's just tuition pays most of the stuff. No, tuition, it really is only about a quarter of how universities fund themselves nowadays. Maybe a third. But a huge chunk of it is from donations and from grants. And so when the grants go away, tuition's going to skyrocket, and it's going to be even worse than it already is. And universities don't really have much incentive yet to fundamentally change the way that they do business. So there's that. It can get much worse for the general public. It can also get much worse for the industry as a whole. I mean, we already for years now have seen a lot of states try to get rid of tenure. And tenure is important, and I don't mean to just make blanket statements about tenure. It protects people all over the political spectrum who work in academics, from people on the far right to people on the far left. It's not just there to make sure that people on the far left get the benefit. That's what people think tenure means. Tenure also doesn't mean that you can't be fired. It just means it makes you much less vulnerable to being fired. All that to say is when tenure goes away, and research grants go away, you've pretty much gotten rid of all the incentive for the smartest people in the country to work in higher education, which means the overall value is going to go away just at the moment that it's becoming more expensive to get anyway. So there's that problem. The other thing to consider too is a lot of people. One thing that I think is very disingenuous for people to say is, "Oh, well, there's all these technical jobs that we need. They don't really require a college degree. You can just get a certificate and you can go to this kind of stuff." And that's true. You can get certified from computer science all the way down to, construction, welding, electrical work, plumbing, all the different things that people say all the time. And it is true. You can do those things and you can make quite a lot of money doing those things. But higher education still is a marker of social status in a way that almost nothing else is. There are some levels of society, and we do live in a hierarchical society, we do live in a class based society. There are some levels in that hierarchy that you cannot be part of if you do not have a college degree of some kind. And even then, it matters where you went. So, like the company that I work for, by and large, if you didn't go to an R1 highly ranked institution, you don't even get considered. There are plenty of, law firms, medical schools, different, professional industries that don't consider you at all if you didn't go. And maybe you're so talented that you get in anyway on your own merit, but then you won't fit into the culture of wherever it is you're
Oh
working.
yeah.
So there's that too. So I always say it's a bit disingenuous for people to say, "Oh, just go get certified in something or just skip college. You don't really need it." It just depends on what you want in life. But there are certain things you won't achieve without it, like becoming president. There's never been a president that didn't go to college. There's never been a Supreme Court justice that didn't go to college. Like those are the types of things I think it's worth pointing out to people. And not to say that I think that's the way they should be. It just, from a pragmatic perspective, that's the way things are.
Yeah. One thing that we've talked about again on this podcast a lot recently is the importance of the Pope. And I have a point
The
here.
Pope.
Yeah, the Pope. We're fans of the Pope over here. One thing that the new Pope, Pope Leo the 14th, said this week that is an attack on human dignity is how prevalent AI is right now. And I think what he means by that is using AI for art or for uh, writing research papers when you have the capability to write it yourself and you're smart enough and capable and able. That is an attack on human dignity. So, kind of in that line, I want to tie it back to the Pope. I want to tie it back to AI. We've talked about the administrative level of the university. I want to bring it back to you being a professor and
Mhm.
teaching students. Have they tried to use AI in their work? Have you caught
Oh, yeah.
anyone?
Well, first of all, I can always tell the difference.
How?
Always. You hear people speak, and even before AI, I could always tell the difference between a student who wrote it themselves and if they bought it online or got someone else to write it for them. You hear the way people speak at you, and most people's writing style is not that distinct from their speaking style. They keep the same rhythm, they use the same vocabulary, all that kinds of stuff. So if I force my students to participate in class, I assign a participation grade for this reason, so that I can hear them talk at me at least a few times before I grade their written work. And that's how I can tell whether or not they've somehow, some way had assistance in whatever it is they've written, AI or otherwise. And I'm almost always right when I point out and say, I think this was plagiarized, or I think this was AI generated in the course of events. I've always been proven right. So there's that. But one of the things, like from the human dignity perspective, one of the things that I point out in my primary job in tech consulting all the time is that AI is built on patterns. It takes, all the data that it gets put into it, it analyzes that data and it comes across patterns and then it replicates patterns. That's how it ultimately works. That's how you train it to work. It can never replicate human creativity because humans are idiosyncratic. A lot of what we do doesn't make sense. A lot of the ways we react to things doesn't make sense. Even within ourselves, we do things ourselves that surprise even us sometimes when we encounter things that are unusual to us, or maybe we've reacted a certain way like when we've broken up with someone the past 4 times, but then this time all of a sudden we have a different reaction. Our tastes change as we get older, all that kind of stuff. It's idiosyncratic. And so AI is never going to be able to replicate that either. So, I mean, just look at artists who've had incredibly long careers and they've always been changing things up as they go. Like, for lack of a better example, Madonna, very known for always producing new stuff. AI could never predict any direction she was going to go over the course of her career because she's the prime example of someone who is idiosyncratic. So it can't ever replicate that, and for that reason, you can always tell, and it's always going to be inferior.
Do you see a lot more students as the years have gone on, or more and more students using it in their work?
Yeah, I mean, the first stages of that were more and more students were looking stuff up online, um, Googling stuff. That was the first wave of all of this. And you would always tell they would be citing like the most garbage sources for their papers. I would even be like, look, like just if you're not going to look at an academic journal or an academic article, at the very least, look at something like the New York Times. But they would be just random Google sites. ChatGPT is just the next manifestation of that trend. I think a root cause of all this is not the technology, but that we live in a culture, number one, that doesn't prize intellectual achievement. We say we do, but we actually don't.
Why?
Well, I don't know why, but we just don't. All that to say is people do not go to college because they have an innate interest in what it is they're studying. They go because they want to get a higher paying job. They want to increase their social status. It's what's expected of them, move on down the list. We also are a society that overemphasizes the importance of STEM. A lot of people are naturally interested in STEM and they thrive in that, but a lot of people pursue it because they think it's going to make them more money, but they have no actual interest in it, which means they're incentivized to cheat because they don't actually care.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really a root cause of all of this. The students who are in my classes that you can tell are genuinely interested in the subject, and you can really tell this at the graduate level, they want to be there, they're genuinely interested, are the ones who it never would occur to them to use Chat GPT because they actually read the material. They actually want to engage with the subject matter. They actively ask questions in class. The people who use Chat GPT are the ones you can tell don't want to be there. They're just there because they're trying to get a promotion or they're trying to get a pay raise. They have no innate interest in any type of academic field whatsoever.
When I was getting my master's several years back, actually, it was coming up on my what is it?
You started it 8 years ago.
No, I did my master. I graduated college in 8 years.
Yeah, you
or
graduated 8 years ago. So,
No, I graduated college in 3.5 years, but I
no,
graduated
but
8 years
yeah, but
ago.
8
Yeah,
years ago. Mhm.
yeah. And then I did a few years with a full-time job, and then went back and got my master's. And when I was starting that, that's when like Chat GPT was just like people were figuring it out. It was, oh, Chat GPT can do math, like what's 2 plus 2, and it would give you 5. And people were enamored by the fact that the AI was wrong. Could not even imagine being in grad school with the capabilities of what AI is able to do now back then. Blows my
Yeah.
mind. I can't even comprehend what that
So,
would be like.
one of the biggest concerns with AI, and you see this in memes all the time, you see this in commentary, the ethics of AI, is that it's more so than any other technology in human history, it is a critical enabler of what's called cognitive offloading. That, and I would agree with this, it's actively making you stupider because it doesn't force you to take in the information, commit it to memory, digest it, interpret it, reconcile cognitive dissonance. I mean, one of the things that's well established now in cognitive science is that reconciling opposing viewpoints for yourself leads to cognitive growth. So if you are relying on ChatGPT to gather, process, and interpret and distribute information for you, you are actively inhibiting your brain from growing. So the more that you rely on it, the dumber you're going to be in the long run. And if a whole generation of people are doing that, it's a whole generation of people who are dumber. It's kind of blunt way to put it, but it's true. I mean, Gen Z is going to end up being dumber than millennials because of their over reliance on technology. So, and this goes back to my point a minute ago about innate interest in what it is you're studying. For me, part of what makes me an old school academic is I actually like the subject that I was studying. I read about it all the time. I want to have it in my head. I pride myself on not having to consult other sources when, I need to speak on the subject that I'm supposedly an expert in. I don't want to have to look anything up. If you've relied on ChatGPT for the entirety of your schooling, you are now dependent on it. You will never at
Mm.
any point in your life be able to speak off the cuff. You will always have to have that crutch with you. And it's pretty frightening to think about that when you consider physicians, like an ER physician. I don't ha- I don't have time for you if I've just gotten shot to look up what it is you need to do on ChatGPT. I need you to have it in your head
Yep.
and be able to react reflexively. People who've relied on ChatGPT are never going to be able to rely on reflex or instinct to do what it is they need to do. And I think that's pretty concerning. And I wish people would just stop using ChatGPT. I know they won't, because one thing about human nature is most people are really lazy and most people are quite okay with being dumb.
Wow.
It's they are.
I'm not arguing that. I want to keep it on the theme of your students. What's the worst thing that you've seen a student do, say, or use as an excuse?
Well, you're probably referring to double pink eye first and foremost. I had a student within the past year. I'm not going to say when. I don't like for people to be able to deduce who I'm talking about, but this is a student who didn't take the final exam, even though it was available for her to take it electronically for 2 whole weeks. She didn't take it, and then she emailed me after the fact to say, and there was something else she didn't do. Anyway, she was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I couldn't take it. I have double pink eye." And my first reaction was like, "Get out of the sewer." Like, how does, first of all, a 21-year-old end up with double pink eye at all, let alone in both eyes? And how did it last 2 whole weeks unless you were like literally just face down in the sewer every single day? Pink eye, it's very simple solution. Just get some antibiotics and some eye drops and it goes away in like 2 days. So that was probably like, I wouldn't say the worst thing a student has ever done, but it's the most kind of audacious, because even if it's true, I would never admit that. I would come up with some other disease that didn't make me seem so slovenly.
Sure.
Um, the worst thing I've ever seen a student do, and this was actually quite a long time ago, was I think I was still. This was over 10 years ago, actually, but I distinctly remember this because it was such a dramatic moment in my career in higher education. I had a student who missed basically a whole semester. And most universities do have this thing where if something truly traumatic and dramatic happens to you, you can get a retroactive withdrawal from the whole semester. Like if you've already gotten the Fs, they've already assigned grades, you can be like, "Look, I had to have open heart surgery. It took me out for 2 whole months. Can we just erase this whole semester as if it never happened?" You don't get a refund, but at least the grades get taken off your
Yep.
transcript. So this student missed pretty much this whole semester of my class, got an F, applied for a retroactive withdrawal, claiming that he had been in this like 8-car pileup and, had all this medical stuff going on and, just couldn't be in class and had to have all these surgeries and everything. So we convene all parties. There was a committee at the university that convened to like review the evidence and everything. And we discover that like we're reading these police reports and we're reading these medical records, and it's a guy that's turned it in, and like deep down in one of the medical records, it has some kind of treatment for the cervix. And we're like, huh, the cervix, you say. Not to make any type of gender assumptions, but the student in question looked very cis male, and all other records and appearances made him come across as male. So we were just like, this seems weird. So then we were like, well, we need to just like do some spot checking of the facts here. So we called the police department, and the accident did happen. It was a real traffic accident, but the person who was in it was not him. It was his aunt. So, and she died. So like she actually died. He took over all the records and like falsified all of these police reports, all of these medical records to make it look like he was the one who had been in the accident, so that he could get this retroactive withdrawal. And so, of course, we were like, not only are we going to fail you, but now we're going to expel you because you did this pretty egregious thing. And then he was like, you know, huffy and puffy and like threatening to sue. And we're like, we'll turn you over to the police reports because it's a felony to like falsify police reports. And so he ended up not doing that, but he did flip the conference table onto its side and like was violently threatening us. We had to be locked into the conference room while security in the building escorted him out. Then, like, we think this is all settled and done. They find like
Oh
an
my
hour later, they
God.
finally let us leave. And so I go across the street to meet a friend at the university hotel that had a restaurant in the bottom floor. And we're going to meet and have like a late lunch in there. And we get seated. And the guy that just got escorted off campus is there with his parents at the very next table. And I was like,
Please tell me you left.
we need to sit somewhere else, please, because I don't need to sit this close to this person with knives on the table. Like, this is not a good. So that's probably the most extreme thing that's ever happened. But that had nothing to do with AI or technology. That was just like outrageous, like making up this wild claim that he'd been in an 8-car pileup and all this kind of stuff. Yeah.
There's bad, and then there's that.
There's like aggressively bad. Like at that point, it's just like accept your F and move on. Be thankful that we're not turning you into the
Oh
police.
my God. I have a story, and then we're going to take a break. Back in, I was a senior. I was a senior in college. I was on spring break in Los Angeles, and I know someone who was in college out in Los Angeles, and she made a fake obituary so she could get excused from her class because she was a like it was like one of those debutante balls, one of those like Southern balls that coming of age you pay $30,000, you're the queen of the ball. Well, that was her, and she needed to fly back to Alabama for a dress fitting. And the only way that she could get excused is if she had an excused absence. And the only excuse that her professor was going to accept is like if there's a death in the family. And lo and behold, she opened up Adobe uh, InDesign and made a fake obituary for a family member.
Did she get caught?
She did not get caught.
Hmm.
She did not get caught. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we are going to I'm going to ask Ben a couple questions about things I need his opinion on, and then he has a list of what he's not wrong about. All right, and we're back from the break. Our glasses are refilled with some nice, lovely wine that Ben brought. I needed to end it at that point. There's a cat here in my cup. I needed to end it at that point because that story just took me out. And then we just had a really riveting conversation on the break that maybe we'll talk about at a later date and time.
Why not talk
No.
about it whenever?
No, we're not going to bring any of that up.
I really don't care.
So I've prepared a list of things that I want your opinion on.
Okay,
So are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Salad dressing that is 60 calories or less.
Yeah, so we actually have had this discussion recently because he mentioned Bethany Frankel, and I was like, "Isn't she the one in charge of Skinny Girl?" I knew about the cocktail mix, the Skinny Girl cocktail mix, because that was something she was doing when she was on the Real Housewives. But I was like, "Is she also the one in charge of the Skinny Girl salad dressings?" Because I was like using the salad dressing, and I was like looking at the bottle, and it was like 10 calories a serving. and the whole entire bottle was 60 calories. I mean, ordinarily, even a regular light dressing is more like 100 calories a serving. And so I was like, there's something wrong with this. If I can use this whole bottle and it's not as much as just a tablespoon of a different kind of dressing. And so I was like, there must be carcinogens in this. There's no other way to explain it besides the fact that the primary ingredient is vinegar and water instead of oil and sugar. So I was like, there's something else about it. Meanwhile, I proceeded to dump the entire bottle into the bowl because I was like, why not? Every single piece of lettuce is going to be drenched today. Um, and it doesn't really taste all that different. I was using raspberry vinaigrette. It's not that different from any other raspberry vinaigrette. So then I was relaying the information that I had tried a different brand. I'm not going to say what the brand is, but a different brand that promises, it's organic, it's keto approved, it's all these different diet plan approved, Whole30 approved, there's no carcinogens in it. Or chemicals, nothing like that. And I got two different kinds. I got a vinaigrette and then I got a ranch. And like the ranch would not come out of the bottle. It was just solid. And I was like, well, there must be something wrong with this bottle. Let me buy a second one. So I go back and get a second one. Same thing with that bottle. Like it's just not coming out. It
Mhm.
is as thick as peanut butter. And then, so I'm like, well, let me try the vinaigrette. So I pour on the vinaigrette. It, of course, I mean, it's serviceable. It tastes like nothing. You may
It's
as well just,
serviceable.
it's serviceable. You may as well just put olive oil directly on your salad. That's what it tasted like. It had no taste. And then I put the rest in the refrigerator, and the next day it is congealed, like completely solid. And I've never had this happen with a vinaigrette. And I'm like, you know what? It's the carcinogens that help the salad dressing keep that texture. It's the chemicals that play a vital role. And so it's like, I just need the carcinogens back at this point. Like, this is part of my weight loss journey. I would rather have the weight loss and risk the cancer. That's just where I was in my headspace when I told Chad this story. I was like, bring back the carcinogens to the salad dressing. They provide a service.
To which we need an explanation from Bethany Frankel, and I will put this on TikTok, and I will fight to the end of the earth for what is in her natural flavors. That's the only thing that
Yes.
we could figure out were the carcinogens and that.
I'm not suggesting that Bethany Frankel is trying to give us cancer. It's just a joke, but it's more an endorsement of the product because at 60 calories for the
How?
whole bottle, I'm like, I don't understand how this can taste just like the Newman's Own raspberry vinaigrette, which is like triple the amount of calories in it. I can't. There's something in those vague natural flavors that is
Yep.
carrying a heavy burden, and I need to know what it is.
It's the natural flavors. I have
It's the
to
natural
figure out what that
flavors.
blend is. Usually, if a bottle, I was telling Ben this, if a bottle says natural flavor, or if a product says natural flavors, it's a proprietary blend that they're allowed to call natural
Mm,
flavors, but there like might be 100 different
yeah.
things within that natural flavor. So I will, like I said, I'll put this on TikTok. We're going to try to get an answer from Bethany Frankel and figure it out.
It is an endorsement. I still buy it. I've expanded. I've tried the honey mustard kind. I've had the Asian ginger sesame kind. I've tried them all. They're actually out at Publix right now. I bought them all. So
Jesus Christ.
yeah, I don't like going to the grocery store. So when I find something I like, I just buy all of it. There was a day I was there. I don't remember what day it was. There was something going on. There was something going on in the city of Birmingham, and people were all up in the water aisle. And I was like, why are all these people in this water aisle? And I was there to buy sparkling water, which I drink like it is my job. And
What brand? Let's see if we can.
are you going to try to guess?
Yeah, no, we're going to try to get a brand deal. What brand?
Oh, a brand deal. I buy Perrier, the
Oh, okay. That
blackberry,
might be
the strawberry with a lime.
that might be too elevated.
Well, I mean, it has the best flavored kind. I mean, sparkling water that's unflavored, you can buy any of them. It's just sparkling water. But the flavored kinds, theirs is the most subtle flavor.
Okay. Okay.
I don't like a huge amount of a fruit taste, and so theirs is just like a hint to make it not just plain water.
Mhm.
So I like theirs, and I went and bought all of it, the entire shelf of the Perrier, whatever they had. I bought all of it. I was like, I'm not. Oh, it was when there was like the tornado day, and everyone was there like buying supplies for the alleged tornadoes that were supposed to come but never did. This was in March.
Oh, I did an episode on that day. Y'all know the episode was my bonus episode. I think Tornadoes is in the title. Go back and listen to
Yeah,
it if you haven't.
probably.
I bought a helmet because I was like freaked out. I cleared out that closet over there.
And I was like, I told a few friends who I also know like drinking sparkling water. I was like, if your final drink before you died was going to be sparkling water, tough titty, I bought them all, and I'm not sharing. I bought them all at the same Lane Park Publix where I was buying all those condoms that day when the manager had to call on the intercom to get a price check on the condoms because it wouldn't scan.
If we're going to talk about condoms on the podcast, people need to know he was buying the condoms for his
Or
birthday.
party favors. I was not buying them for myself. Although the people at Publix did not know that that's what was happening when I roll in with like all of the condoms in the store.
So you go all in when you're buying stuff from the grocery store.
Yeah, it's just because I don't like going. I think it's a big inconvenience. I live downtown in Birmingham, and there's not aside from the Piggly Wiggly on Claremont Avenue, there's not really a grocery store down here. I mean, there's a Publix downtown, but I'm not going to that Publix.
Mm-mm.
So to go to a grocery store for real is an event. It's like at least 45 minutes round trip. You get in traffic. You've got to navigate the parking lot. It's a big thing. I only go once a week. So when I go, I buy all of what I need.
Sure. So the next thing I want your opinion on, donations to churches. Tread lightly.
Tread lightly. So this is not a commentary on being religious at all, although I am not particularly religious.
Well, let
Although I
me
wouldn't
just say
say-
this. I'll make it a commentary on Christian nationalists. We talk bad about Christian nationalists on this podcast.
I mean, of course, yes. I will preface this by saying because I do think this is important, and this is from Margaret Atwood. She says atheism is itself a religion because it makes a definitive claim about the existence of God.
Jesus.
It just says there is none, but it's making a definitive claim. I don't claim to be that. I'm willing to believe that there might be something out there. We just don't have the means to prove it, and so I'm not going to make truth claims about it. So
Okay.
I stand in the Margaret Atwood camp. When
Is
it comes
that
to religion.
is that more agnostic?
Yeah, that would pretty much be agnostic.
Okay.
So that's also because I'm an academic. We're very reluctant to make truth claims about things we can't definitively prove one way or another. Anyway, so as far as church donations go, I don't mind people tithing and giving to churches and giving huge amounts of money to churches, so long as that money is going to things like soup kitchens or homeless shelters or, clothing children in poverty or funding scholarships or, whatever, some benefit to the community. I take issue to a church demanding 10% tithes, as my previous denomination did, if that's going to pay for the minister to have a lake house, or the minister at a church that I went to one time had a car and driver. I'm like, I take big issue with that. So, I'm A-okay if that's how you want. Just first of all, it's your money, spend it however you want. If you are going to give it to a church, please make sure that you are being vigilant about how it's actually being spent, that it's benefiting the community in some way, because that's the whole point of Christian mission work to me, is that you're actually not just preaching the gospel or whatever it is you're trying to spread, but you're actually leading by example. So there's that. I would say the same thing with any type of philanthropy. I don't really like when people give money under the auspices of being generous, but then make this huge list of demands that must come with it, such as naming a building after yourself or getting a spotlight, because I was in higher ed. So people would make donations and want to be called out on the football field, or they'd want a building named after themselves, or, they'd want a banquet held in their honor. So it's that kind of stuff that doesn't really sit well with me.
Sure.
So there's that.
Sure.
That said, I don't donate a lot of my own money, mainly because I don't really have it to donate.
Sure.
But if I did, like I say all the time, if I ever get back to my home institution, I would not be giving it to the athletics department, and I would not be giving it to the general endowment. I'd be giving it to either fund a scholarship or to fund faculty research.
I've always thought with going back to the church donations, I know we talked about this a little bit, but if I'm going to be donating to a church, they better be feeding the hungry.
Right.
They better have some kind of clothing, giving clothes to the poor.
And they better not be hosting political fundraisers for anybody.
That's there should be laws and regulations on that. And if you're donating to a church, they should not be using your money to provide a private gym for the church attendees.
Oh, yes. Mhm.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
I
So,
do. Mhm.
so all that to say, that's why I'm obsessed with the popes on this podcast, is because Pope Francis, like when he came to the United States, he did not want to ride in the presidential limousine. He wanted the Fiat.
Yeah.
When they try to hold a state dinner for him, he wanted rice and steamed vegetables. Turn down the Apostolic Palace. If you're going to preach the word of God, you better live like Jesus.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm very much that way in my own life. I feel like I try to practice what I preach. I don't really preach all that much, and I wouldn't say I'm necessarily a role model or a positive example to people, but I do if there is a view that I espouse, I try to also live by how I claim I do. So that's very important to me with anybody.
I want your opinion on why you're single.
Why I'm single. Hmm.
Why are you single, Ben?
Preface this. So I'm currently in the midst of my annual download all the apps just to see what's out there and remind myself why I'm better off alone.
Dating apps. He's referring
Dating
to dating
apps,
apps.
the sex app, any of them, the apps, Hinge, Tinder, whatever. I get on there and usually I'm first of all, I am not built to participate in an app. Number one, I am a much better sell in person. Number two, I don't understand the lingo that people use on dating apps now. They ask things and I don't know what they're talking about. And in general, I find most of what's out there to be quite horrifying. But every year, usually around this time of year at the beginning of the summer, because I'm not teaching, I'm not doing anything extra with my free time, I get on the apps out of boredom and I'm just like, let me see who's around, maybe who recently broke up with someone and now they're back on the market again. Let me just see what's going on. And usually I'll scroll through like a couple hundred profiles and I will see not one thing that is of interest to me. I'm currently in the midst of that. And so I do get highly amused by the experience. So it's kind of a sociological experiment to me. Um, and so there was one that I posted about on my own Instagram story yesterday that said looking for eggplant emoji and conversation. And I was like, this is me if I'm at a Sotheby's open house, looking for eggplant and conversation. By which I mean I'm looking for someone to just buy the house for me. I'm not actually here for a relationship. But then I was talking to someone else about it the later and we were talking about the eggplant emoji and I was like, when I use the eggplant emoji, like I like eggplant emoji, I don't mean I like dick. I literally mean like baba ganoush, eggplant parmesan. Like you're never this is part of the reason why I don't work very well on apps because people are like, what are you looking for? Like what are you into? What's your key? All that kind of stuff. I'm just like I I'm really honestly not looking for anything. I'm bored and all my friends are out of town and you say like you expect me to say something dirty and I'm incapable of doing it. I can't do it. So it just doesn't work out for me. So like in 2 days time I'll delete them all again. But what Chad's question is rooted in
Get to it. Come on.
is I was talking about how if I ever got married, because I really don't feel the need to have someone around me all the time. I'm quite happy with myself and being alone. I like my alone time. I'm happy with my own company. And so I don't really need anyone around me all the time. And I'm not very affectionate either.
That is true.
uh, so like I have friends, I'm nice to people, but I'm not affectionate. Like I'm not someone who's going to like put a physical relationship first and foremost in my mind. And so I was saying that I stand to potentially inherit a certain amount of money someday. Maybe I won't, who knows? But as the record stands now, I might. And so I was like, the only way I'm going to marry someone is if they're offering more money than that potential inheritance is going to be, because otherwise, what's the point? And when you think about it, sociologically and anthropologically speaking, for your own entertainment and enlightenment, you should read this article, this famous feminist article by Gail Rubin called The Traffic in Women, where she tracks the history of marriage from an anthropologist's perspective. And marriage originated as a concept for the exchange of property and political alliances.
What year was this?
Oh, like before Greek and Roman, I mean, like very far back
Okay.
and like thousands of years back. People got married to forge alliances with other tribes or to exchange property, or it was essentially a financial transaction. It was not originally a religious sacrament, and it certainly was not originally an expression of love. So really, I'm just having an originalist interpretation of the concept of marriage. If
Okay.
you're going to do it, it needs to be for money. Otherwise, why bother?
So I now want your opinion on your former life of being a former Alabama Republican.
Oh, so what Chad is referring to, which I guess he just found out
I
before we
forgot.
started
I knew about
recording
this, but I
podcast,
forgot.
when I graduated long ago, I interned.
Wait, can I interrupt real quickly?
Yeah.
I make fun of him on this because he is so far from that. So I make fun of him for it. So it's fine. It's acceptable. Continue.
Like people, I'm idiosyncratic in my political beliefs, but mostly I am liberal. But I did intern at the Alabama Republican Party, and in fact moved to the state of Maryland to work for the Maryland Republican Party, although that was very short-lived. I then switched to working for an event planning company, and then switched again, and then eventually came back to Auburn to get my PhD in education. But yes, I did spend some time working for the Alabama Republican Party. It was much less political than really you would kind of think. It was mostly hosting fundraisers. So really all I did was like put flowers on tables and like, you know, run through guest lists and make sure people paid their money and
But
made sure people got free drinks if that's what they wanted.
but you were still associated.
I was still associated.
So the next thing I want your opinion on is the voice memo that I'm about to play.
I am not wrong about where and where not to park in Atlanta, Georgia.
So why did you send me that voice memo?
So some backstory. I've known Chad for 10 years now. I was working at the university at the time, and Chad randomly came into my office one day. Oops, I just kicked the table by mistake. Randomly came into my office one day, and somehow, some way, a couple of years later, we end up in Atlanta for 4th of July weekend with another friend of ours named Evan. And Evan was a former collegiate mascot.
I need to have Evan on the podcast.
Evan is unhinged. And but we were in Atlanta. Chad was like, I've never been to a gay bar before, so y'all should take me. So I'm like, whatever. I had already booked a room at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel, which was downtown. There used to be one in Buckhead as well, but we were the one downtown. And we're going to go to all the different bars on 10th and Piedmont. So Blake's 10, it's now called X. It was 10 at the time. Joe's on Juniper, all the different ones. And Chad gets to the hotel the second day that I'm there. And I'm like, you need to just pay to valet. Like, you should just pay to valet. It's totally worth your money. This is downtown Atlanta. Don't just leave your car randomly wherever. And he doesn't listen. He's like, I don't want to spend my money on this. So he
Because I had none.
Because he allegedly had none. Although if he had played his cards right at Blake's later in the evening,
Okay,
he might
keep
have
talking.
paid quite a bit.
Keep talking.
So anyway, Chad parks in this random parking spot and an empty parking lot across the street. I'm like, all right, well, I mean, if that's what you want to do, that's your business. We go to Blake's. At one point in the evening, Chad has disappeared. People who've been to Blake's know that there's 2 levels. There's like a small kind of patio
This is irrelevant. Keep
deck.
talking.
Yes, it is. It's completely irrelevant. It's character illuminating. So he disappears. I eventually find him. Well, at first though, he asked to borrow a David Yurman necklace of mine. And so he's like disappeared, and I'm like, we've got to find him. If for no other reason, I've got to get that necklace back. Like, if I have to pull it off his corpse, I'm getting that necklace back. It was so expensive. So we find Chad out there with my necklace. It was still intact. I get the necklace back, and then we come back to the hotel much later in the evening. And it's like 2 or 3 in the morning. We've ordered room service because we haven't eaten anything. Chad orders a hamburger. I order Caesar salad. It comes, and I'm sitting there in the window, like on the 10th or 11th floor. And I'm like, Chad, don't you drive? You drove a Honda Pilot, I think, at the time. And I was like,
Oh my God.
did you park in that parking lot across the street? Is that your car down there? And he was like, yes. He was like, why? And I said, I'm pretty sure it's about to get towed. Like there's some kind of truck. This guy is inspecting your car. And Chad, in his boxers, goes like, drops his hamburger and just goes running out the door with his cell phone and his keys and his wallet to go investigate this situation. Meanwhile, I'm just still sitting there eating my Caesar salad because I was like, this Caesar salad costs $55 fucking dollars. I'm going to eat it. And so I'm watching this whole scene down below for like 20 minutes of Chad in this verbal altercation with this tow truck driver, and Chad has thrown his phone and all this kind of stuff. And I feel like at one point you like jumped on the hood of the car, like laid on the hood of the car, like somehow, some way to prevent this car from getting towed.
I did not have money. What do you
It
not
ended up being
understand?
the case that the car didn't get towed, and I think you had to move it to like a parallel spot on the street.
I did.
So you did have to move it out of that parking lot. And there I was just sitting there in my robe, just eating my Caesar salad. And I'm like, I told you not to park in that parking spot. You should have just valeted.
I had no money.
He had no money. So then the next morning, he got up at like 7 o'clock in the morning, completely hungover. And he was like, I've got to get my car out of that parallel parking spot before the parking meter kicks in. And so he like collects his things and just like walks out. And that was it. He was gone for the rest of the week.
I had to go back to work. I worked at the university at that time.
Yeah.
I had to go back to work.
Special.
It was bad. That was bad. So I know you have prepared a list of things that you're not wrong about. Do you want to pull that out and go ahead and share
Now I
what you're
can't
not
really
wrong about?
remember what it was. So I did have to, I knew I wouldn't remember. So I have to bring out my phone. There's a lot of things.
It's okay.
Last night when we were talking about this, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to have anything to talk about because I can't think of anything.
Remember,
And then,
microphone to mouth.
Over the course of the day, I did come up with a lot of stuff. And first of all, one thing that has been on my mind a lot because I rewatched it the other day was this movie called Baby Girl. I don't know if you've seen it.
I've heard of it.
The Nicole Kidman movie Baby Girl, this psychosexual drama.
So, real quick, so before we get into Baby Girl, I just want to say I end all my podcasts by asking if I have a guest. I ask the guest to wrap it up by asking what y'all are not wrong about. So that's what you're about to do. You're about to wrap up this
I'm about to wrap
podcast
it up.
episode. Yes,
I'm being cut off.
but yeah, we've been going for about an hour 15 now. But Baby Girl was filmed at Remedy Place, and that's where my boyfriend worked in New York. So when he was working up there, his coworkers were a part of some of the scenes, like the hands that you see open. Like he knows those girls who did that.
Yeah.
And so he had a day off of work, I believe. I don't know if he had the day off or if it was already an off day for him, if he benefited or not. But he didn't have to go to work that day because they were filming Baby Girl. Is that not awesome?
Yeah.
Oh, you don't give a crap.
Well, I was just gonna say the designer of the apartment, the interior designer of the apartment that it was filmed in. So Nicole Kidman's apartment in the movie. The designer was God, I can't remember his first name, but it's the Malone Studio on Instagram. A friend of mine who's an architect in New York, and I are both obsessed with him because he posts all the time. It's our style, but also he's incredibly good looking. And he designed that apartment. So we
Sure.
post back and forth all the time. Occasionally he posts very kind of slutty little Instagram posts with him in glasses and things like that. Anyway,
Your list.
the Nicole Kidman Baby Girl thing, this has been on my mind all the time because people have been debating like what the most controversial moment was in the movie. And really and truly, it got a lot of press for being controversial. And then when I saw it, I was like, this really, I mean, it's no more controversial really than like the Adrian Lyne movies from the 80s, like 9.5 Weeks and Fatal Attraction. There's not that much nudity in it, not really. The most scandalous thing to me, the two things that stuck out to me, and we talk about this all the time, is number one, there's a scene where her little boy toy, Harris Dickinson, takes her to this like rave type nightclub, you know, like thumping, pumping music. They do ecstasy. And she's in this like very demure kind of gold silk pussy bow blouse. And she's done the ecstasy and they're like dancing on the dance floor and she like takes it off and she's got her like camisole on. and she like is waving it around and throws it on the floor. And then they disappear somewhere else into the club. And I'm like, I cannot get over this because I'm just like, that blouse probably cost you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars, and you just threw it on the floor. Like, no amount of ecstasy would make me do that.
And you have some pretty expensive stuff in your
And I
closet.
own some pretty expensive.
Yeah.
Do not be fooled by this. I do occasionally dress well. And so I'm watching that. And then the most unhinged thing in the whole movie is later when that scene is closing, like they're leaving the club, is she is walking out the door of the club with that top back on. And I'm like, that's the most implausible shit I've ever seen. Number one, she would never find that top again if she threw it on the floor of that club with all those people.
Do you know
there.
what club it was?
No, I don't know what club it is. But it was just like a bit, like hundreds of people on the dance floor. They were all, it was like strobe lights, you know. You would never find that again.
Probably the Eagle.
You tell me, I don't know. So, number one, she never would have found it again. But the fact that she put it back on after it had been on the floor, I'm like, this is the most disgusting thing I think I've ever seen in a movie. And I saw the substance. I was more disturbed by the pussy bow blouse on the floor getting back on Nicole Kidman's skin. And then there was a scene when they first started hooking up in the movie where he like makes her, like he takes her to this like 1-star motel, the dingiest hotel. It looks like, you know, a hotel in a Martin Scorsese movie, and makes her get like on the floor and lap up some milk from a saucer that's been sat on the floor on this carpet. And I'm like, Nicole, ain't no dick work this. Ain't no dick work
So
this.
you're-
Like, I know that you haven't had an orgasm with your husband at all, ever. But please, let's hold out for St. Regis.
So you're not wrong that movie is unrealistic.
That movie is unrealistic. And also it's like the things that make it scandalous are not the sex.
I have not seen it yet, so let's move on to the next one. I don't want to spoil.
It's not very scandalous.
Okay.
So
You got a long list there.
I do have a long list.
I appreciate the work.
Here's one thing. Okay, so this is something that some of my friends in my friend group talk about all the time, and you maybe can weigh in on this. One of the things that crossed my mind today was that it is just not possible in the gay community that this amount of men are in the type of shape that they're in without some type of assistance.
Mm-hmm.
It just cannot be the case, because for 2 years now, I've been on my own like fitness journey, because I started it because I was trying to get off of antidepressants, which I did. And I don't take them anymore. And exercise does help elevate your mood. It keeps you focused on something positive, that sort of thing. So it works. But I follow all the like different types of advice and things that people do. I have a one-on-one trainer. I don't have like a specific diet, but I pay very close attention to what I eat and what I consume. I cut back on alcohol, all that kind of stuff. And there are people that I know who have been doing a lot of the same things I do, going to the same class, same trainer, and have gotten these like incredible results in about a quarter of the time. And I'm just like, it cannot just be the case. It can't just be genetics as the difference, because otherwise we're doing the same exact things.
This bothers me. I think partly they always go out, they have an amazing social life. And you're like, how are you drinking that much?
You're drinking
how are
this
you
much,
eating this awful food?
going to Chez Van Fine, French rich food restaurant all the time.
I think they're not drinking when they go out. So I think that helps them. So they're not consuming sugar, they're not consuming alcohol, they're consuming maybe other things. So they enjoy going out, but it's not via alcohol, and they're things that might suppress their appetite. Number one. Number two, yes, no, I do not understand, because as you know, a few years ago my cat's about to jump back on Benjamin, so I'm shooing him away. A few years ago, I did go through my own weight loss journey, and it took me a full year to lose about 60-ish pounds. And then it took me a full on another year to build muscle. And even the muscle that I built,
it doesn't last.
Number one, it did not last.
Unless you're maintaining the same exact training schedule,
which is not, it's not feasible.
It's not sustainable.
It's not. That's the word. It's not feasible. It's not sustainable. But also the amount of muscle that some of these people have is like, I don't
cannot get that naturally.
No.
Not in the space of 6 months to a year. You
I'm not a
can't get that
I'm not
naturally.
a conspiracy theorist, but I will put the metal
No,
tin
I'm a
hat on my
conspiracy
head right
theorist. I
now.
think they're all on drugs. Um, and I don't mean like cocaine. I mean like human growth hormone
Yes. Yes.
and meth. Um, so here's another one that I was thinking about. This actually kind of plays a little bit into your talk about AI. But one of the things that I was talking about with someone recently, and this kind of is relevant to every relationship I've ever had, is people say that they want truth in relationships, and they also say they want people with brains in relationships. But in
Mm,
reality, they don't.
mm,
That has, like, when you hear people say what it is they really want out of a partner, they say like honesty, truth, they want someone that they can have an intellectual
mm-mm.
uh, connection with. My experience has been no, they don't, because I happen to be a pretty candid and truthful person, as well as an intellectual person. And those tend to be the things that people like the least about me.
For sure.
So,
Mhm.
at least in any type of like romantic relationship, friendships, that's fine. But, any other kind of relationship, people do not like that. So, they hate the truth.
Yeah, no, I think when we think of truth, we think like in black and white. Like there's information that's wrong, there's information that's true. But then in relationships, I feel like when someone says like I want truth, it's on a spectrum. It's like, do I have to go searching for this information? Or are you going to be like forthcoming
Yeah.
with it? But
Well,
I always say don't go searching, don't go asking the questions that you don't want the answer to, because that's the like
and there's also truth in the sense that they say they want someone who's emotionally available, which means emotionally truthful. This is how I'm feeling now. This is how you make me feel. People want you to be accommodating of their emotions, but they don't necessarily want to reciprocate, is part of what I'm hinting at here when I talk about people don't want truth in a relationship. They want to be truthful, but they resent it when you're being truthful back, especially if you're pointing out opportunities for improvement, uh, which I don't usually volunteer unless I'm asked. People all the time ask me for my opinion. And if you ask me for my opinion, I'm going to give it to you. And then they resent me for having done it. And I'm like, you asked. So there's that. And people really don't like smart people because I think it goes hand in hand. I think the more intelligent you are, the more truthful you are because you just have no tolerance for duplicitousness, which is me. I don't have tolerance for duplicitous behavior
sure.
or fraudulent, just superficial behavior.
Yeah. I just want truth, period. I mean it when I say that.
Yeah, I do too.
But I do know what you mean. Like there's people that say they want truth and then they quite literally don't know how to handle the truth or they don't know how to process it. They don't know how to react to it.
Yeah,
They don't
and
know
I
what
don't
to
mean
do with
truth by
it.
you telling things about other, like telling something to your partner, like if you were my partner, me saying like you off, like me criticizing you. Truthfully, I truly believe you have these. That's not what I mean. I mean like truth in that I live as is. There's no facade up. People want a facade,
Mhm.
and they don't. Whatever they fell in love with and when they met you is how they want you to be always. They don't want evolution unless it's evolution for the better, but that's just not how people are. Sometimes you improve, sometimes you have hard times, sometimes you just about face and all of a sudden you're on a different trajectory. But yeah, that's what I mean. So
What else are you not wrong about?
that was a serious one. Let me see if I can find a silly one. One thing, because I brought wine over here today. One thing that I'm never wrong about is that most people who get all fussy about wine are big fat frauds.
What do you mean by that?
There's I go out to fine dining a lot. I do like fine dining and I do drink a lot of wine because of all the different intoxicants in the world. Wine is the least offensive to me. But there's all these people that get very like,
Let's put a mental note on offensive intoxication.
okay,
I have a follow up.
okay.
Continue.
So a lot of people get very like particular about their wines and like get very snotty about wines. I sit with I know a lot of sommeliers and I know a lot of people who are just like wine collectors and stuff, and they get very nitty gritty about wines and then they get very judgmental about other people with wines. And like, I know a lot about wine only so I can have a conversation with these people and not seem like a dunce. But at the end of the day, I'm just like, okay, the sommelier is sitting here telling me that this wine is distinctive because it's very minerally and earthy. And I'm like, who really wants to drink dirt? We are here because of the ABV, the alcohol by volume. If this had no alcohol in it, no one would drink it. It's like, why are we getting very like fussy and judgmental about wine when ultimately what we're here for is its intoxicating effect, not its flavor? It doesn't really taste good. There are some that taste better than others.
Yeah, you are so right.
Just like the people that go to the bar and think they're very sophisticated because they've ordered vodka neat. And I'm like, it tastes like isopropyl. It does not taste good. It does not make you an adult drinking vodka
Mhm.
straight from the bottle with a cube of ice.
Alcohol is disgusting.
It makes you deranged. It's horrible. If it did not have the intoxicating effect, we wouldn't drink it. So like these people are like, oh, I love a nice little Grey Goose on the rocks. And I'm like,
No, you
no, you
don't.
don't. You're lying. You are lying to me
It's like
because I'm as sophisticated as it gets. And I think my heart, I go into palpitations if someone is like, let's take shots. I'm just like, like gag is already kicking in because it tastes terrible. It's like taking a whey protein drink mixed with water. It doesn't taste good. No matter what you do, it's not going to taste good, but you drink it because it has some other effect
Sure.
besides
Sure.
taste. It's the same thing with alcohol. So when people get very prissy about food is one thing. I get it. Food does taste different. There are different things. There are different qualities to food. I get food prissiness. I do not get prissiness about wine, and it gets on my nerves a lot when people are like, "Oh, but an old world wine is so much better than a new world wine." I'm like, all it is rotten grapes.
just ask them. Define old world.
Yeah,
They can.
Oh, well, old world would be European, basically.
They wouldn't. I guarantee you, people in Birmingham, Alabama, going to Chez Fonfon, they would not be able to define old world.
Yes. So, like, I can tell the difference between grape. Like I can tell the difference between a Sauvignon Blanc and a Chenin Blanc and a Chardonnay. They do taste slightly different, but like within a type, there's not that much difference.
Unfortunately, I'm just not there yet.
Yeah, well,
We have time for one more. What you're not wrong about? So
what
let's.
I'm not wrong about.
Yep.
Let's see.
Last one. Make it a good one. No pressure.
What I'm not wrong about is this whole thing about sleeping early to bed, early to rise is a scam. I wrote this down last night mainly because it was like 3 in the morning and I had taken trazodone and I still couldn't go to sleep. This whole notion that everyone is most productive when they have like this routine schedule that starts at 8 a.m. and that's the way the world should be and you should just get used to it. Turns out science has demonstrated that not everyone is meant to live like that. There's a disorder called delayed sleep phase syndrome. It can actually be classified as a disability, which means if you are an employer, you should have hour flexibility for your employees because not everyone functions the same early in the morning. Some people function better in the afternoons.
Can you give that diagnosis a definition?
Delayed sleep phase syndrome is basically that your just natural sleep time is not and awake time is not what most people's is, which like the average person, it's 8 hours starting at 10, get up at 6. You know, there are some people who potentially, I'm not saying I've been diagnosed, but I fit all the characteristics where no matter what I do, I can take sleeping pills, I can eliminate caffeine, I can do all the things you're supposed to do. I will not close my eyes before 2 a.m. It just won't happen.
And you're saying an employer has to recognize that legally as a disability.
I think you would do yourself a better service as an employer if you allowed people to start their workday within reason at a time that suits their natural wake up time.
Mm.
So when I worked in this was the only good thing about working in higher education was that I didn't teach until the afternoon. So my work day did not start until noon, and I was never more productive in my life because my natural wake up time is around 9 o'clock. Like on a Saturday, if I don't have to be anywhere, I will naturally wake up at 9 o'clock. So I was more productive. I was more alert. Everything went well. The job I have now, I am technically supposed to work on the Eastern time, so I have to be logged into work at around 7 o'clock in the morning.
Oh God,
I
no.
am not nearly as productive as I would be if I could start at 9 o'clock. So,
Mm-mm.
framing the whole of the business world around an 8 o'clock Eastern start time is nuts to me because it assumes that every single human being on Earth naturally functions in the exact same way, and they don't. So, for years, I've been saying this that like it's not that I'm just like partying all the time. I can get in bed at 10 o'clock. I can do all the responsible
But you're just
things,
not
and
going to go to
it's
sleep.
just not. I'm not going to go to sleep, and I'm not going to stay asleep until 2 o'clock. And then all of a sudden, my recent discovery was that there's a sleep disorder called delayed sleep phase syndrome, where people who have it just don't respond to any other sleep related treatments. No sleeping pills, no
Mm.
nothing works for them. Sleep hygiene doesn't work for them. It just never in my life.
Can we go back to the mental note on the offensive?
Offensive
Yeah,
intoxication
yeah. What can you do before we close out this podcast? Can you give a definition to that, please?
of offensive intoxication.
Why, like, why did you say that? I've never heard of an offensive intoxication before. Like, what do you mean by that?
I would say I guess I meant illegal or undesirable. I mean, wine drinking is a respectable form of
Oh,
intoxication.
so you're saying like I don't like whiskey, so if I got drunk off of whiskey, that's like
Or yeah, or if it's offensive to you. Like I find tequila to be offensive just
so
because I don't like it.
it clicked. I get it.
Yeah. I
Cool.
mean, it's not when I said like getting intoxicated in a way that is not offensive, I meant like to you, whoever you are personally. I find wine to be the least offensive because I don't really mind it. If I'm drinking like a tequila cocktail that's not heavily covered in like lime juice and sugar, it's going to be kind of repellent to me. I just don't like the taste of tequila. I don't like the sensation of it in any regard.
Understood.
Or rum. I don't really like rum.
Mm-mm.
Yet I had my birthday at a tiki bar, but
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that off camera.
yeah, so anyway, that's what I meant.
Well, Benjamin, thank you so much.
Thank you. I
I
hope I was amusing enough.
You were. We talked for 44 minutes. How long is that? Sit back. We're not done with the episode yet, though.
Oh, what are we doing now?
I got to close out.
Oh,
So for our viewers right now, I have books and between Benjamin and I on my side table, and it goes George Bush, Decision Points, Barack Obama's A Promised Land, and then Becoming by Michelle Obama. So I bet I just want to call out that yes, I do have George Bush's Decision Points book because my favorite kind of book is an autobiography or a biography of some historical figure. And Decision Points by George Bush is one that
I met George Bush when he was on that book tour, by the way.
I'm actually jealous about that. I bought that book when I was in high school. Um and I bet a lot of Republicans right now are looking back on that being like, "Ah, damn, we had it so good." And who would ever think that we would be saying, "Oh, we had it so good under George Bush."
Yeah, the
Can,
times.
for 2 seconds, can we talk about the rebrand that George Bush has gone through with
Look,
his
you stay out of the
painting?
public eye. For real, he stayed out of the public eye pretty much. If you stay out long enough, that's your rebrand. You don't really have to change yourself. You just have to like minimize exposure
I'll tell you what,
for a long enough period of time, and people forget.
the best thing that could happen to George Bush is his break from the public eye, his art, and his daughter on the Today Show.
Well, his other daughter, Barbara,
Brilliant,
yeah.
brilliant, and also the best thing that could happen to him is also like
Mhm.
Donald Trump making
Well,
him look like a
I was going
liberal.
to say Laura Bush has always been his stronger selling point.
That is also true.
But yes, of course, the way politics has turned out of late. Speaking of, so taking it back for a minute to my time at the Alabama Republican Party, one of the things that my friends love to bring up all of the time is this picture of me with Rudy Giuliani at the Auburn University President's Mansion because somehow, some way, I got invited. I was still a student, and I got invited to the Auburn's President Mansion because Rudy Giuliani came to campus to speak. It wasn't for a graduation. It was just some other random event. I think SGA brought him there, actually. And so I got invited to go, and so there's a picture of me with Rudy Giuliani, and he is surprisingly tall. On TV, he looks very short, but he's taller than I am. And I'm 5'11".
So mental note this, Jeff Sessions. We're going to talk about that off camera. But anyways, I just want to say that
I interviewed to work for Jeff Sessions' office when I first moved to DC, by the way.
Let's not talk about that. So yeah, no, we have George Bush's book, Barack Obama's book, and Michelle Obama's book because I love a political book. But we have 2 Democrat books compared to 1 Republican book because I'm clearly a Democrat and I love the Obamas. But he has a Promised Land, and if I'm not mistaken, that was like part 1. There was supposed to be like a second book that was to come out, and I'm thinking about it. That has not come out
You're
yet.
asking the wrong person. I don't read political memoirs.
Okay, and
I've
on
read
that,
none of these.
and on that note, if you have something that you're not wrong about, please DM me and send me a voice message on Instagram at He's Not Wrong Podcast. If you would like to call in and leave a voice message for me, you can call 205-538-3202. Be sure to watch this podcast, leave a comment. Well, not watch it because I don't like it when y'all watch it. Share it. I want you to share it. I want you to leave a 5-star review on Spotify and Apple Podcast. I need comment reviews, please. What are you doing? Leave a review for me. It helps me out greatly.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that?
And then follow us on OnlyFans.
Okay, that does not exist. Jesus Christ. All right, you know what to do. Leave me a voice memo about what you're not wrong about. Give me a voice call or voicemail at 205-538-3202, and I will see you next Sunday.